We are back on the early edge, and it's always NFL season. We got the NFL schedule coming out in about 5 days, allegedly. Let's see if it actually comes out. We're going to have a lot of content related to that. But first and foremost, let's talk about some NFL futures when it comes to receiving yards, when it comes to passing yards, when it comes to rushing yards. And I got to welcome my guy, RJ White, because he's going to get in on that discussion. And folks, I want to start with passing yards leaders. Let's take a look at some of the futures when it comes to the projected leaders in passing yards from an odds standpoint. We got Patrick Mahomes at the top, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Tua down the list, Joe Burrow, and we close it off on this graphic with Brock Purdy at plus 2,500. Prop stars, I'm going to start with you. You're looking at this list right here. Anybody striking your fancy as far as a passing yards leader in 2024?
Yeah, I like the value that Joe Burrow provides here at 8.5 to 1 odds. Yeah, if I'm looking at my models and my projections, I have Joe Burrow projected to throw the most passing attempts in the NFL this season, barring health. I think it's a nice buy low spot considering he appeared in just 10 games. Really like how this Bengals team shifted to a high volume passing offense as well. I also love the addition of Jermaine Burton, the wide receiver from Alabama. He will be taking over for Tyler Boyd, who's vacating this team, currently a free agent. I think that's actually going to kick Jamar Chase inside a bit, who'll be playing from the slot, allowing Burton and T. Higgins to operate on the outside, where they're both just prolific downfield threats. I love the weapons that Burrow has at his disposal. I think they're going to run the ball less. I also think the defense is going to be fairly mediocre, which is going to invite some high scoring environments. I think if Joe Burrow stays healthy, he's due for a big, big statistical season.
RJ White, welcome again to the show. Speaking of high scoring environments, the Dallas Cowboys, well, they might find themselves in some high scoring environments. What do you like in terms of passing yards leader in 2024?
Yeah, I'm going with Dak Prescott. I mean, he was one of three quarterbacks with 4,500 yards last year, led the league in completions. Dallas trusts him to power the offense with his arm, but the attempts per game were still down from 2021 peak. So there is room for him to grow a little bit. And the defense played well these last couple of years. I think they could take a step back with Dan Quinn gone. There's no run game to speak of, really. So if Dallas drops out of the top five in points per game allowed, it's going to be more passing in the second half of games. And I think that's going to benefit Prescott. His attempts are going to go up a little bit. We already know he's very efficient with his completions, and he could get over that hump and lead the league in passing yards next year.
All right, I like that play. Mike McClure, I got to be honest. I'm a little jealous of you in general, like about everything, but especially about the fact that you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan and they keep winning. You're going to have to convince me why your play is not a complete homer play. So what you got on passing yards leader?
Well, I will say I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL still, but when I look at this year for the Chiefs, there's going to be a massive focus on trying to three-peat, but I think they're going to find themselves in a ton of very competitive football games, Sia. I think the division's getting a little better. You obviously have all the changes with the Chargers, but when you look at the non-divisional schedule as well, they've got the Bengals, the Ravens, the Texans, the Bills, and the 49ers. I think that leads to some of these games being more competitive. They have significantly revamped the receiving room for the Kansas City Chiefs. We know they're going to put the football in his hands. If they find themselves in more competitive games, I think that they're going to have to throw a lot more. And I think he's going to hit a few more home run balls this year, having Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown. You look at how competitive he's been in this market in general. That was with a very slow start last year with Travis Kelce and some of the others just dropping passes, turnovers, things like that. I think the team overall gets a little worse, which helps Patrick Mahomes get a little better. So I like him here to lead the league in passing yards.
Mike, those graphics we just saw concerning Patrick Mahomes are truly staggering. And I certainly like the play on the defense, maybe taking a small step back, forcing Mahomes to perhaps throw the ball a little bit more. Let's take a look at rushing leaders. Let's look at the odds board first before we get the plays. We've got, oh, that's a familiar face. Christian McCaffrey at plus 270, JT at plus 550. On the way down the board, Saquon Barkley wearing a different uniform. He's at plus 650. And then we get to Breece Hall at plus 800. And prop stars, that's where you come in. There's a lot of very talented running backs on this list. Talk to us about maybe a couple of plays that you like in the rushing leader department.
Yes, yeah, I've got two picks that I love, starting with the aforementioned Brees Hall at 8 to 1 odds. Brees Hall is one of the most electric, dynamic running backs since he's stepped foot in the NFL. He's averaging career 4.8 yards per carry, really, despite having basically no passing game and a very poor offensive line as well. That has shifted heavily. We know Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback of the Jets, hopefully barring health, and the Jets invested heavily in the offensive line in the offseason, taking a first-round tackle in Fashanu. They add Tyron Smith as well as Morgan Moses. So they really beefed up this offensive line. I think the combination of that and having competent quarterback play is really going to open things up for Brees Hall, who is just a big play waiting to happen. So I love this spot for Brees Hall to potentially erupt. And there's another running back I think provides some good value. We're looking at 25 to 1 odds on Nick Chubb here, as we can see in this wonderful graphic. Career 5.3 yards per carry. The guy has been one of the most efficient running backs, not just of his generation, in NFL history. Prior to this lower body injury, you could make a case he was the best pure runner in the NFL. We know the Cleveland Browns always have an excellent offensive line as well. I know Nick Chubb has been very motivated to get back on the field, experienced that injury in the first week of last season, so had the full offseason to rehab. So I think Nick Chubb is going to have a big bounce back season. He's always a threat to lead the league in rushing yards as well. So I'm sprinkling on him as well as Brees Hall.
Well, I'll tell you what, whether he wins it or not, I think we're all very much hoping he gets back to regular health because that looked like a devastating injury. All right, RJ White, what's interesting is I mentioned Saquon Barkley changing uniforms, but there was another stud running back that changed uniforms this offseason, and you like him as the rushing yards leader.
Yeah, I'm going with Derrick Henry at plus 1,200, 12 to 1. He's a little bit below that second tier of running backs behind Christian McCaffrey, and I don't see why that is. He was second in rushing last year, and that was with weak quarterback play and a bad offensive line. Baltimore also has those offensive line concerns this year as well, but Lamar Jackson is going to open up them run lanes for Derrick Henry, and I think he's just going to have a big season. Baltimore did lead the league in rushing last year. You can attribute a lot of that to Lamar Jackson, but the running backs also combined for almost 1,700 rush yards. And Henry's going to get most of that now as the lead back. That's what they brought him in for. So I like him at 12 to 1. I think that's a very good value. And if we're throwing in some sprinkles, since it sounds like that's what Proppy did, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on James Cook at 40 to 1. Buffalo looks like a team that wants to run and play defense this year with how they've constructed this roster. And they gave him a lot of work on the ground as well. He actually probably ranked higher in rushing yards than anyone here expects if you go look at the numbers. So I think he has an outside shot at 40 to 1 to have a chance to.
That's an interesting one at 40 to 1. Let James cook. All right. Well, Mike, I know you don't have a play in the rushing yards leader department, but you do in the receiving yards leader department. Let's take a look at what those odds are before we get to three picks there. We have got, of course, Tyreek Hill leading the list here. CeeDee Lamb second, interesting at plus 700. Then Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown at plus 1100. And it goes on from there. Oh, I see you, Garrett Wilson and Puka Nacua at plus 1600. Those are also very interesting. Prop stars, we're going to start with you yet again. Who do you like in the receiving yards leader market?
I am all in on Jamar Chase. Yeah, I just think this is shaping up to be an absolutely monster season for Jamar Chase. Again, I anticipate and I have my model projects this Cincinnati Bengals team to be the highest volume passing offense in the NFL this season. Jamar Chase will be the biggest beneficiary of that. Would not surprise me if he leads the league in targets. Oh, by the way, Jamar Chase is the most double-teamed wide receiver in the NFL by a significant margin, I might add, over the likes of Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson. I love the Bengals draft pick of Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. To me, he's a massive upgrade over Tyler Boyd. It's also going to allow Jamar Chase to kick inside, where he is going to just be a matchup, a nightmare, much more difficult to double team him over the middle of the field. So I think Jamar Chase is headed for a just massive season along with Joe Burrow. I think he's got a good chance to eclipse 2,000 receiving yards in the event that Burrow stays healthy all over Jamar Chase here. I think he provides great value.
Oh, what's interesting, RJ, is while Justin Jefferson does command a lot of doubles, I mean, Jordan Addison, he's a pretty good receiver for the Vikings as well. We hope TJ Hawkinson is healthy. It looks like you're looking to Minnesota in the receiving yards leader department.
Yeah, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I had him at 11-1 when I looked at this earlier today. You have him down at 9-1. So apparently somebody's looking at my notes here and they're making plays based on that because it seems like his market's dropping. He was second in yards per game last year. His average was actually better in the 4 full games after he returned with no Kirk Cousins. So if you believe that the quarterback downgrade is going to be a factor there, I'm not sure that it is. He's the rare receiver who's open often, no matter how many people are covering him. You just throw the ball to him, he'll get it. That means I'm not worried about the rookie quarterback. He's going to get 10 plus targets per game. You mentioned TJ Hawkinson. He may only play half the year after an ACL tear late in the season. And I think McCarthy's just going to lock onto Jefferson here. And he's going to be the guy that is getting all these targets. You see that he's had the most receiving yards in his first 4 seasons in NFL history here on this graphic. And that's because really nobody can cover him. You put 2 guys on him, you put 3 guys on him, and it doesn't really matter. He's going to get his. So I think he's going to lead the league in receiving yards. Try to get it at plus 1,100. That's what I saw earlier today. But I think that's a good value, especially if you're getting him under that first tier of odds.
I'm right there with you, RJ. I love Justin Jefferson again. I mean, it's hard not to. I think he's the best receiver in football, but certainly you shouldn't have him lower than 2. But when you look at this setup here, I think he's being downgraded far too much for having a rookie quarterback. As RJ mentioned, he has the ability to get open. And as Sia mentioned, Jordan Addison is a very, very productive number 2 wide receiver. But I think the most underrated part here for this, they get to play 11 games in a dome next year or this season. 11. I know the schedule itself isn't out, but the opponents are, and they play home games, obviously, in the dome. So 11 of their games are in a controlled environment. That certainly helps the rookie quarterback. And I think they're going to be relatively competitive. I don't think they're out here blowing football teams out, but I don't think they're to the point where we're pulling anybody off the field either. So I think this is a situation where they're going to be throwing the football a ton, and it's going to be heavy, heavy volume towards Justin Jefferson here. I'll take him to lead the league in receiving yards.
Yeah, I'll say this too about JJ McCarthy, who I'm not as big on as some other scouts, some other people at SportsLine, for example. But Kevin O'Connell, I have a lot of confidence in him. So I think he's going to put JJ McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and the rest of the cast in beneficial spots for sure the entire season.